Welcome to the Spinfoil Theory podcast, everyone. This week we're starting a little different. Our guest, Different Lettuce, has led us down a two-part episode rabbit hole on the Signs and Destiny. So this is actually going to be part 2, and here in a second it's going to pick up exactly where it left off last week. So if you haven't listened to part 1, I highly recommend you do that. And if you just like to live dangerously, you've been warned. So yeah, let's start the show. Welcome to this week's Spinfoil Theory. We're about to take a dive into another mystery from the lore of Destiny the game. Specifically, we'll be giving high-level scrutiny to popular, emerging, and outlying theories than judging them. If you have any questions or theories of your own, write to us at spinfoiltheory@gmail.com or visit us over at spinfoiltheory.com. And now, let's put on our spinfoil hats and get a little crazy. Here comes this week's show.
Well, then
I think
I was going to say I kind of want to pose the subject of our most recent episode to you, and sorry if you haven't gotten a chance to listen yet, but how do you deal with the idea that someone who was killed to become an exo, and that exo also died, right? Could both the person who died and the exo become guardians?
that was actually a really interesting question, and one I've actually been thinking about a lot since I heard it. I will tell you though, I'm not like, I actually have friends who are like super experts on exos and mind transfer. From what I understand, there is the idea of like mind forking. So essentially, that you take someone like Clovis Bray, and essentially he's forked his mind into Clovis 1, who became Banshee, and also into the AI, Clovis Bray I, as you would call it. But what is interesting is that Banshee, and a friend of mine actually, I think she goes by the name Epsilon on Reddit, but she actually came up with something interesting, was that that Clovis 1 was brought online while Clovis was still alive and experiencing things. So in a way, their experiences there's a fork in the road, and Clovis 1, obviously we know they have completely different experiences. They're able to, they do something quite heroic, and they even sacrifice their memories for Elsie's sake. So in a way, they've done things that are very different to what Clovis did. It sort of brings it to
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was going to say, so Clovis Banshee is created with clarity, and so exos created in that process do not have their stage 1 memories. That, to your point, that's why Clovis did the AI and the exo exchange.
Yeah.
Because the AI was able to keep the memories. However, if you go over to some different, and this isn't a gotcha, just kind of like as a posit, I swear to God. If you go over to other exos, where like 801, where they're made with radiance as opposed to clarity, she kept her memories. Ada remembers. She did. She remembered her life before she went to bed as a human and woke up as an exo. She remembers all of her experiences leading up to that.
Yeah, that is pretty interesting.
She didn't know that her mother was her mother until we give her the Black Armory pages. I distinctly remember that.
Well, yeah, but
I'm an Ada simp. But that's besides the point.
Is that more of like a black box thing, you think? Kind of like
I'm not sure if that's like a black box thing or not, because like she always said like, Risen or Guardians killed the founder of the Black Armory. It was the founder, and it wasn't until like the end of the story, or near the end, that she realized, the founder that was murdered, that was my mother.
But doesn't she lose it at some point? Because I want to say in that narrative, she hides it after she silences that one guardian, that one warlord.
I'm not sure. I just remember she didn't really
I thought there was a difference
understand the
doing it. Yeah, sorry.
Full disclosure too, it's been a long time since I've read that lore.
Yeah, I've only read it a couple times. I can go double check.
This is how
but I'm
Taylor-B gets you.
But that radiance thing is quite interesting.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, no,
think a lot of
I
people-
definitely think it's interesting, but I wasn't sure. I don't want to like say, oh, if you use radiance, there's no need for the memory wipe. That's kind of what I was.
I'm just wondering. What I'm wondering is if radiance changes the nature of the transfer. Sort of going on what you were saying, Lettuce. Sort of if the allowance of radiance or a light-based transference, as opposed to clarity, which seems to be clearly based on darkness.
Yeah. It's a difficult one. I have seen that a lot of people sort of theorize that was the nature of Ada becoming an exo, was that it wasn't reliant on clarity, it was reliant on radiance. But that's kind of interesting as well, because if you read Clovis Bray's journals, he needed the darkness to sort of to. I'm trying to remember, because I know that he had two problems. There was the billboard issue, and then there was the DER. But I think the billboard issue was what he needed. He basically had to add error into the exo mind in order for it to have what was called qualia, I believe is the term. So that sort of, I'm not quite sure how it would work in Ada. Like if you're only using the light, and she was quite young, so
yeah, that's another thing. Yeah,
here's the thing that gets me. If when you know who you are, there is no clarity, air quotes. When you make the transfer, you start picking at yourself. You start pulling yourself apart because you remember what you're supposed to be.
That's really interesting.
I almost wonder if the clarity is not knowing.
interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's kind of exactly right, and you do sort of see. Yep.
Sorry. In entry 100 of the Black Armory pages, right after Ada wakes up, she basically keeps asking her mother like all these questions and this and that, and then the last entry is her writing a letter to Ada, basically, and it's does the name I'm gonna butcher her actual name.
Is it Henrietta?
As long as you I was gonna say, as long as you try your best, you're not butchering it.
Okay, I guess that's true. Basically, yes, I know. This is basically it's her. Basically, this is like her final goodbye. You became Ada 1 when I robbed you of your end. I've loved you since before you were born, and in trying to give you everything, perhaps I've robbed you of a final human experience, a dignified death. Blah blah blah.
Yakety smackety.
I'm trying to figure out the word.
For us older guys.
If you want to know about your past, know that you were born a second time in the Niobe labs. When you were wounded at the labs and I saw you losing your fight, I did what I always did when the chips were down. I created something. You, Ada 1. And then, so I don't think Ada really knew who I think that's just a process of being an exo, regardless of whether you use radiance or clarity. You have to have a clean slate. You have to, otherwise you're going to be crazy.
Similarly, what we recover for Ada in giving her, I guess, her at least like knowledge of who she was before she died is similar to what happens to Elsie or the Stranger when she recovers the proverbial black box of that first spin-up, the one that didn't have a mouth and
Yeah.
all that other stuff and rebelled against Clovis Bray. Would you guys say that's right?
I would think so. Or it's
Yeah,
the
I'd
similar
say.
thing of how Cade had when he was res as a guardian, how he had his journal with him, and it was like, oh, this is who I was. It's a very similar thing, kinda. I would say.
There's some interesting philosophy around that as well. Like I've seen a lot on the Destiny lore. There was one post ages ago that really stuck with me, and it sort of said that Banshee almost became the blueprint for Guardians because he essentially was like the worst man in the world. Clovis Bray, not a good dude.
Yeah, definitely.
And yet wiped of all his memories and given, sort of free will and the ability to sort of change his own destiny, he was able to be a good person and actually, and make sacrifices. And that's, I think, that's essentially boils down to the wager that the gardener is the gardener is basically the darkness just thinks we're all selfish, that we're just in it for me, And while that is obviously true for some people, what we've seen time and time again is that, you had obviously all the warlords and that, but the Iron Lords won out, and we built the city, and we banded together. You have people like Aldrin, wiped of all his memories, became a new person. The Crow, for all intents and purposes, is a new person. And this goes back to, I suppose, the answer to your question is about whether you could have sort of two people. And I suppose maybe a part of me thinks that, like, Clovis Bray the First was a different person to Banshee, and I think Aldrin, the different person to Crow. So I don't know. It's Exos are sort of a bit of an interesting thing, but it brings it's. I think it's more of a philosophical one rather than a scientific one, because it's really it makes you question what is the idea of personhood. What makes you and not someone else. And if you can fork minds, that complicates things.
Well,
that's
what brought us back to our topic last week. Not to rehash episodes. Sorry, guys. Is we were wondering, because there is a death involved in the creation of the Exo, that then there's remains, right? There's remains, and Exos have equal personhood. I think in this case we were kind of surmising they were a copy. But then you have to wonder, is there that element of anima? Because if a copy of something is also as viable as the original, which one has the soul? Or is the soul as easily copied?
Yeah. And again, this is getting into pretty metaphysical territory. And I don't really necessarily... I'm probably as in the dark as you are. This is something I do find very interesting. And this is what I love about Destiny, is that it does go from science to this real sort of deep existentialism. Like, seriously, what video games do that? That's amazing. And, and that's... But yeah, that's, I suppose, something that we're sort of learning more and more as more lore comes out. I think that if you're forking the minds into two different, I think they are two different people. And then if they were resurrected, I think Cade 6 and former Cade may have had like a contiguous experience. So when, he sort of, Clovis has taken a destructive copy and then brought him back as an Exo. So there was no fork in the road, I guess. But yeah. So maybe that it wouldn't necessarily be possible to bring back the old Cade, because the Cade that was the Cade that we know, that there wasn't really any fork in the road. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm sort
I
of
can
just
see that.
riffing here, but that's sort of my take on it.
I definitely think if we spun up, if we were to pull Cade from the Deep Stone Crypt, right? Pull his back up, spin up a new exo, and be sure to give it a beautiful, beautiful horn.
Yep.
I think while they might be quite similar, that Cade might hate us and want nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
Inside with the darkness, I think there's something that comes with, even on the exo side, being reset 5 times. Or being spun up fresh from your first copy, or being the human that copy was built from. So, I always wonder, what if there's a Guardian out there that is Cade before he became, that was risen from the remains of Cade, the human?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly, there's, again, the Lord's always surprising us. It's funny because just when we think we know things about ghosts, there's the example of Shin Malphur, who was, I want to get this right, but I think they were rezzed by a ghost,
Tianchi,
and became but then later, I think must have lost the ghost, and then Jaren Ward's ghost sort of took on Shin Malphur. So it's like an example of what's your take on that?
Well, so they're buddies, they're companions.
Sorry to segue into something different.
So, and Lucy, feel free to jump in here if you disagree. Tianchi's dead. It sacrificed itself. That was from the ghost stories, right? That summoned him, and that ghost is dead. Jaren Ward's ghost, whose name I don't remember, is Shin's buddy. It recognized him as a guardian, what have you. It can probably do stuff like open doors, maybe even transmat if the transmat technology comes from the ship and not the ghost. So maybe it can activate it for them. As noted later, when you find out the truth about Caleb and some of the other stuff that Shin was getting into, it's noted that he only has that one life. So I don't think Jaren Ward's ghost can res him, though they are buddies.
So how is he able to use a golden gun then?
He's still a guardian. It's noted even in the dark future. Well, it's noted even in the dark future that a Zavala, without his ghost, is able to stand on the Traveler and channel massive amounts of energy to where he becomes this giant human nuclear bomb missile.
Yeah, right. Okay. That's interesting. I mean, that's actually something I didn't know.
Because I guess think of the ability to use light as more, I wouldn't say more of as an intrinsic thing, but from my understanding, which could totally be wrong, even in the Red War first mission, Cade on the comms would be my golden gun's kind of fizzing out a little bit because I've used it too much over the past battle that's ensuing. And well, I do think that ghosts are kind of I wouldn't say kind of how you said how you said earlier, Lettuce, with a Wi-Fi. A Wi-Fi. Think of the Guardian as a cell phone. You have a certain amount of charge.
I think of the Guardian as a capacitor.
Capacitor, I guess that's probably a better.
Yeah, so you pull out your laptop cable and you look at the you've still got a light on because obviously it's still kept some of that charge. I've always sort of thought, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've always sort of thought that if you lost your ghost, you'd have whatever light
remain. That's basically
you'd probably have if you had a supercharged and you lost your ghost, you might be able to use that super in one burst. But once that was it, you wouldn't have the link.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
I just want to say, so here's the thing, right, guys? Shin Malphur is noted as using his super effectively one time. Just
Also
one time.
true. Well,
the other time he's purportedly used it or allegedly summoned his golden gun was with Anor, and he's doing silly stuff like tossing it from hand to hand. Now, here's what I'm saying, guys. Shin Malphur has been known to stage events to look one way while really being another. I.e. Caleb's death and the whole scene we rushed into where we thought he was executing a Dredgen of Yore. So that being staged makes me wonder if everything he's done has been staged as part of this building the legend of Shin Malphur. So even if he's out of light, boom. Yes, please.
This is the most Mulder moment for you. I mean, you were saying Mulder and Scully, but this is trust no one. This is I love
literally. I'm just like,
if we can't trust one thing, can we trust anything?
He let us know he lied, so why can we trust anything?
That is true. I never really thought about that. So when do you think? So if a guardian is like a capacitor, and once they lose their ghost, they only have a certain amount of charge, and Shin Malphur lost his ghost as a kid, technically.
As a baby. As a literal baby.
As a baby, then, like...
He was gathering light that whole time as he grew up so that he could shoot Dredgen Yor, and then everything else he's done has been a stage show. You heard it here first, folks. That's Taylor-B's theory.
That's definitely interesting. I feel like we could use that as maybe another episode or something.
It's definitely got potential. Yeah, I like it.
Especially with a lot of people talking about Shin Malphur recently with
Shayura.
Shayura.
You know what I mean.
Shashay.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say it, but
Trials of Osiris Warlock Lady.
Trials of Osiris Yura.
There you go. Trials of Osiris Warlock Ura. There we go. It's a mouthful, but it works. Yes.
Warlock Ura.
Actually, another thing I'm going to say, I wrote a post about this a little while ago, but so when Shayura goes down to Venus and kills the Elixir from House Light, and then shoots the Guardian with her submachine gun, and all that goes down. But before that, the Elixir is actually taking that particular Guardian to like this grey concrete building, and there's a bit of mystery around it because it's like neither of them like really know what it is, and there's a few. It depends how you interpret. I've seen people interpret it different ways, but he sort of says like the Guardian sort of says like, "What the hell was this place? Like, it's not, it's not the Academy proper." And then the Elixir says, "Not human, machine inside." And depending on how, I'm not sure. When I first read it, I read it as it's not human. I have heard people sort of say that he's more like, I'm not human, so I don't know. But it's interesting because if you go back into the early lore cards, there's this really abstract, I think it's Golden Age 2 or something. And essentially it's like these father and a son, and they basically go to this big grey building, and inside is like this machine that projects the world as it was in the past. And it mentions it being like really hot and acidic and the world of the furnace. And I read this and I was like, this sounds like Venus. Like, and is it a coincidence that there's like the same grey building? Like, it's the only two places in the lore, as far as I know, I've looked on Ishtar, that mention a grey building. It's just like, so yeah, I feel like maybe that was something that people have, like, could be bigger than we think it is. I don't think it's Vex either, because if it was Vex, if it was the Vaulted Glass or it was the Citadel, like, those things, if you're going down to the Ishtar Collective, you look up and you can see the Citadel, and you don't have to walk very far to see the vault. And surely the Guardians would know about it, the Elixir would know about it. I mean, they've raided both those sites several times, but this is something new. So, I don't know what you guys think about it, but I thought I'd put that out there.
Yeah, it's Ghost Fragment: The Golden Age is what it is. I just looked it up. It's really weird. Totally.
It is very weird.
I totally forgot about this. Like, and and I definitely see the connection now. Definitely.
Yeah, and then the next one after that is the Netherby, which is like this. It's like this fresco made of Vestan plaster. And again, it projects like a skyscape, and when people look at it, they get like these images, like 5 to 77 images, and they get all these weird sensations. It's
so
trippy.
Weird.
It's so trippy, and this is the thing about when I'm looking at this, is sometimes I get to the point where, like, I'm like, Vestan, okay, is that Awoken? Is that for Vesta? And then I'm looking at, like, the effects that they're getting, and that sounds very much like what the K1 team. And it's like, okay, is it darkness? It's just like, it's crazy. It's like there's so many things, possibilities that it could be, you know. But there's so much. Yeah,
the infectious wills of what seem to be external or extra universal beings getting at these people. That is wild stuff. Because there's the darkness seems to do it just by being around it. If the K1 is anything, to your point, there's the Ahamkara, which just wearing their bones seems to get inside your mind, even after their own death, which is wild. Yeah, there's.
I've got. Sorry, go on.
No, go on. Go respond. Back. Yeah.
I just want to say something interesting about the Ahamkara, but I'll let you continue, so hold that thought.
No. But, do it now.
Okay. So there was this Destiny lore post, and someone, I forget who, but they basically were like, they were talking about Riven, and obviously Ahamkara are known to be shapeshifters. And they were like, basically the core of their argument was that Riven's always looked the way that she has, because there's, when you finish the encounter and you go into the final room where you dunk the heart, there's a big statue of Riven. And so that was basically the premise of this person's argument. And I posted a comment on there and basically said, Ahamkara, they essentially make objective reality match subjective desire. That's kind of their thing. And there's nothing more objective than a statue.
True,
and
true.
And everyone's mind was just completely blown. They were like, wait, are you saying that statue, you literally, when they change shape, you would understand that any image, I think there's even a lore tab about the Ahamkara that sort of says that the definition of Ahamkara is that, you know, it's the dependence of one's ego on an object or a you know, they sort of transcend that. You know, they them they can be whatever they want, and people sort of like have a hard time reconciling that. But then, isn't that kind of what we do when we play video games? We can just change what we look like. And, you know, there are all those memes of people like when your character is in a cutscene and they've got just some ridiculous looking person in a serious situation. But it's true. Like, that's essentially how you need to think of the Ahamkara, is that they are literally bending objective reality to match our subjective desire. That's actually how they feed. You know, they basically feed on, you know, the line that says reality is the finest flesh. And this sort of goes back into string theory because essentially you have to understand every action that you do has an effect that ripples out, and in physics we call that like a light cone. So it's sort of like the as time goes on, that action will have cause other effects to happen, which have cause other effects to happen. But there is a cone of possible interactions. So I don't know if you played the game. I'm going to segue into video games a lot. If you play the game Assassin's Creed, when you go to like say you've in the recent one, I think is Valhalla. If you go I think you start in Norway. But if you go to past the map, there's a barrier, and the way they explain it, because you're basically in the Animus, and essentially what that does is you have freedom within, besides certain milestones that you have to do, you have a lot of freedom to go and do things your own way, but you can't just go wherever you want because that person never went there, right? So they basically had almost this region of where their presence was actually could affect the universe around them. Like, so if you consider me, right, like I've only been, I haven't traveled a lot, I've lived in Australia, I've traveled to a couple of places, but so if someone was able to go back in time and manifest my brain, they would be limits to what they could do, right? And obviously the internet changes things because now all of a sudden I can actually have an effect. I can be on a podcast in America. This might cause someone to have an idea or whatever. So I've almost widened that cone. This is what the Ahamkara, as far as I know, this is what they feed on. It's why Aldrin was such a danger to have around, because he was quite ambitious and he had a desire. So he had fantasies of what he wanted to be, but just having those thoughts widened the possibilities, and in a sense made forks or separate timelines where there was an Aldrin that did go and do this thing. So just imagine me thinking, you know what, I really want to be, an astronaut. Just having that thought could basically set an event where one of me actually decides, the flip of a coin decides, I want to go down that avenue. And then it does actually happen. So essentially it's almost widened that cone where there's more possible me's, right? Aldrin had a lot of possible hims. Mara, on the other hand, stuck to the plan. That's why she had the plan, and that's why she got all of the Awoken to follow her. Because she knew that as long as they followed her, it would keep that sort of that light cone very narrow. And that's why she could keep Riven around. And Riven, I think, even says when, that she's like a warm, almost like a barren, what is it? A barren sunbed where she can it's nice for basking in. So the Ahamkara basically, Mara is not particularly tasty to Riven, but Aldrin was very tasty. Aldrin had. That's why they tried to keep, and ultimately that's probably why Aldrin's undoing, and why there was this connection that had been formed, and why Riven was able to manipulate Aldrin. So
that definitely makes a lot of sense. That's crazy.
I have a question here. As you noted, like a statue being that ultimate, or not ultimate, but a very great example of ego, right? Right.
Yeah,
What if that statue of Zhur isn't of Zhur? What if that's an Ahamkara? The one who gives us the bow.
Mind blown.
Well,
we went into the darkness realm.
That is interesting. But didn't Mara made... I know Riven helped Mara with the creation of Abyssinia, but I think she sculpted because Shur is not an Ahamkara, so I suppose that would be, if you took an image of an Ahamkara can shapeshift, but Shur can't shapeshift. So I would say that is still the representation.
Well, but
Unless
yeah,
Xur is an Ahamkara.
it's an Ahamkara imitating Xur. It's what I'm suggesting. It's an Ahamkara imitating Xur, because when you take the bow, it speaks to you. The statue.
Does okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go back and play that again.
Yeah,
That is interesting.
Maybe.
There's a lot of things. Though,
that's not something an Awoken should do. Like,
Well, if you vaguely remember, and I think it's in Maracena, it's in one of the lore Awoken themed either lore books or lore entries where Shiraido has a vision and she's telling Mara about it, and Mara basically cracks a pyramid with her hand, and Uldren is there, and some other woman is there, cough cough, it's the extra-stranger. And Shiraido, she says, I wasn't there, I was stuck, I was trapped somewhere.
Trapped, yep. That's
So
the
maybe-
Sleepless lore tab.
The Sleepless, yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm thinking maybe it's not Nahamkar, but maybe it's Shur trapped
but
somehow.
why is she trapped?
Because
Well, then there's
everything that happened with the 9 as well.
and there's the
I'm just saying,
the where guild that the strange coin that's
Right.
left on. The 9 are definitely involved in that. They all almost apologizing.
They're like,
That's the way I read it. Yeah,
Yeah,
because
no, definitely.
Xur, when Oren basically confronts him, and then before she bashes his back with the with the hammer, he's basically like, forgive them. And then you've got the Aphelion as well. So she was apparently the only one who survived an attack from an Aphelion. There's a lot of things. There's the ancients. There's so many things in the Dreaming City that we just don't know. Like, it's crazy.
Dreaming City season. Next season, please, Bungie, I'm begging you. I'm begging you.
Yeah,
is what I think. Agree. What I think lending to whatever's talking to you in that statue, just keeping it to that, is not sure. Is that it's in the Taken realm. When you find it, you have to exit out after you get it to get back to regular reality, and that Taken realm is created by a wish dragon. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I could see that. I mean, that would honestly
is it a Taken realm or just the Ascendant plane? Like,
it's the Ascendant plane. It's not necessarily the Ascendant. So technically,
I mean, if one, then the other.
Yeah. I guess.
See, Taking is almost like when I was coming out with the subclass series. Taking is almost like the black sheep of the bunch, because it's like it's one thing that I haven't, because some people, I suppose, everyone's almost pretty much in agreement that we're going to get like a green Soulfire. Like that's
green.
I think everyone wants that. Everyone just.
I want that so bad. You know what? Like.
Yeah.
As you can tell, so I really like the Hive. So a Hive themed subclass for my hunter, I would cry because I'm a hunter. My hunter is me, basically.
Yeah, and it would also just make there's so much lore as well that sort of it would make sense, because it would basically mean that the darkness has really been around us the whole time. Because it's interesting, because there's the one of the might be Worm Husk or Verity's Brow, one of those ones that you get from the Warmind during the Warmind thing. It basically, one of the perks, it calls it the fourth magic, which obviously at the time you have Arc, Void, Solar. So
interesting.
Yeah,
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, we got Stasis obviously now, but it's interesting because if you look at if you go to the moon, right? I remember way back in even Destiny 1, going to the moon and we're like, what is that crack and why is there green? What is that?
Why is there green?
Yeah, why is there green? Well, the lore actually called it miasma. And when you read it, it says it hints at what's going on down below. And when you're in Destiny 1, you always just thought, well, that must be the Hive. But then we got Shadowkeep, Shadowkeep is a very underrated expansion, by the way. I know it's kind of gets a bit of flack because it was, considered, we're just rehashing. But from a lore point of view, Bungie, when they in the Vidoc, they said this is our first real taste of the darkness. We are very close. When you go to the moon, there's also will creep you out. If you go to Eris basically says, now that you walk the shadowed path, maybe you'll look at Luna through new eyes. I can tell you now, I've been looking at Luna through new eyes. We go to the moon in Shadowkeep, and those fissures have expanded. There's more of that green miasma coming out.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And if you go down to the catacombs during that mission to collect the cryptolith, all the lights go out, and you look up, and you can see the pyramid, and the green energy is radiating from the pyramid.
So you think
that green energy comes from the pyramid, and this isn't just speculation. The lore actually tells us this, and one thing in particular that tells us this: Toland. If you do the Toland, his what is it called? His the bounty where you find, the mini missions. He actually says a whole bunch of things. I actually one of my I'm going to give a shout out to a guy on Discord called Dino. He is an amazing. I swear he is like a computer when it comes to lore knowledge. He is amazing, and he's put me onto a lot of things that I didn't even know existed. And he basically showed me that he had the transcript of the whole Toland things. And Toland basically says, I actually wrote about this in one of my posts, by the way, but he basically says that the miasma that's coming through is terraforming. It comes from the pyramid. It's terraforming Luna, and it is the essence of the hive. He says all of this. And he said this in Shadowkeep.
That's crazy. I totally missed that.
Yeah. And then to caveat to that, we then have another strange energy that is on the moon that seems to be turning everything red and growing spikes. And there's the Heretic Lore tab, and Hash Ladoon actually says that it's a new energy that the Hive haven't been able to tap into, and that it's the space between thought and fear. So if this turns out to be true, it would actually be, because my theory is essentially that the green one will be the next one. That's sort of not saying it's going to happen, but that's sort of what and I think most of the community
agrees,
is heading towards. And I think that the one after that is going to be a red one, which will basically be not necessarily the nightmares, but it will be tied to the phantoms and be tied more intimately to what we've witnessed with the darkness in terms of gravitational waves, the anomalies that it created in order to sink the planets and the planetoids into the vacuum of space. When you actually look into those things, what was it? The journal that got released, I think it was the collector's edition. It's I think called the Codes and Rules Handbook. And if you look into that, they build the big anomaly that you've probably seen in that Crucible map. But they actually mention all of the effects that they're actually protecting it from. And for me, that was actually my Rosetta Stone, because when I came across that, everything that I'd been saying in like scientific terms, that thing was protecting against. So, for instance, when I talked about Soulfire, Soulfire is actually, by the way, from what I understand, is a byproduct of the green energy. So in essence, think of it like this. You have solar light, but solar light can still create fire, right? But the fire isn't the solar light. So you got to think of Soulfire as the same thing. It's almost like an exothermic reaction that is coming from when you're using that green darkness power. So what I understood from that was that that essentially what's happening is almost like spontaneous decay or forced decay. And then you look into the K1 artifact, and literally the first thing that it says is that the surrounding material is actually undergoing spontaneous fission. And then you read further down, and then they start talking about. Sorry if I'm going a bit too. I feel like I'm talking 100 miles an hour.
Is
No, that's fine,
what
man.
you-
It's all. This
is
is awesome.
exactly
This is
what
awesome.
is exactly what the show's for.
Exactly.
Okay, so the third one, I actually do want to talk about what I think the third darkness subclass are. I know a lot of people ask it, and there's different things, and that's why I sort of brought up taking, because some people think that it's going to be the ability to take. I don't necessarily think that is the case. From a gameplay point of view, I just don't think, like, how would that work in PvP? Like, I can't, from a logistical point of view, I can't see that working. But also from a lore point of view,
I agree.
from a lore point of view, it doesn't necessarily. Sorry, go on.
I was gonna say, do you think the Taken subclass might be more akin to being Taken, where you take the knife and it's labeled whatever you lack as a guardian, and then those are what your new powers are?
Maybe. I guess.
I do have a theory. If you read the lore on it, essentially, Eris says that an aperture is opened, and essentially, and you've seen this happen in Taken King. The entity or the victim gets spirited away into the darkness realm, and what comes back is this I suppose it's a more perfect shape that matches what the takee matches the will of the taker. So, and you actually see this in a lot of the lore for the taking, for the taken. So, like, you take a goblin, and it's like, your purpose has been refined. You used to do this, and now you do this because it's better. So it's almost like not necessarily the final shape, but it's the final shape of their purpose. It's a more perfect shape. So, and another interesting thing is that they're composed entirely of sterile neutrinos. So we actually know this from the lore tab, where the 9, they're faken, they have a different You can tell I've been listening. They have a different composition. They're actually made so sterile neutrinos are a type of dark matter, but the ones that the Faken make, they have less sterile neutrinos. They're more of a complex dark matter, which makes sense. So essentially what the 9 have done is they've basically they've used dark matter to make the Taken, but you can tell that it's more of a rich tapestry of dark matter, if that makes sense. Whereas the Taken are only composed of sterile neutrinos. And what's really interesting about sterile neutrinos when it comes to dark matter is that they are basically like the final shape of particles. They are one of the most simplest particles, and they react with nothing except for gravity. So if you wanted a perfect minion, the best thing to do is sharpen them down, sharpen every particle in their body down until it's just a lattice of sterile neutrinos that only reacts to gravity, and then all you need is a remote control, and then you've got the perfect minion. That's essentially what the Taken is. So what I see the Taken is they're being spirited away and almost being exposed to the full spectrum of darkness. They're just it's almost like an accelerated. It's almost, to me, what Jivu, I think it's that the right way to pronounce it. Jivu Arath is almost doing slow taking with the crypto. What are the things that come out? Not cryptoliths, cryptoliths.
No,
Yeah, cryptoliths.
they are cryptoliths. Yeah, the cryptoliths.
Yeah.
And becoming Wrathborn.
Yeah. So, and when any the Wrathborn that are exposed to it, they hear the whispers, and the whispers are actually the Book of Unmaking, and that's actually where a lot of my
I didn't catch
Soulfire.
that first time. Dang.
Yeah. And Unmaking makes sense because, if you look at Soulfire, essentially that's Soulfire. I keep saying Soulfire, but it's not Soulfire. It's the green darkness power that's doing this. essentially what it's doing is if you can weaponize it, and you see, like, you probably use necrotic grips and thorn together, and you essentially turn them into green goo, and you completely disintegrate them. But when you look at both what the Hive were doing down in the pit, where they were doing the whole body swapping thing, and that's actually called the unmaking. That's what they were practicing, and the followers, the Shadows of Yore, they also had the Book of Unmaking that they found on Dredgen Yore's ship. And what's interesting is it actually says that there's a line in there actually says that that's written in a text that's like predates, it's older than the Hive. It's almost like, this is beyond the Hive. Are basically, what I understand is they are trying, if you do like almost slow unmaking of yourself, you can almost, like, I suppose, disintegrate your body and free your essence, but you have to do it right. That's the gist I got from reading Unmaking, was that this is going to be painful, and you could get lost to the Sea of Screams, but if you endure, you could actually free your essence almost from this, bone and flesh, and transcend, or become ascend basically. Which again, there is a certain person that's going around in the ascendant plane that may have already done that. So, but that's basically what I understand this green powder to do. Is it's essentially the sword logic, but at a subatomic level.
That makes so much more sense.
So I brought this up in my post with solar and stasis. So I said essentially, because in all cases it's reducing entropy. I don't want to get into a rabbit trail on what entropy is, but essentially when you reduce entropy, things become more ordered, and that's essentially what we're doing with stasis. We're thermodynamically reducing entropy, and when that happens, the end result is basically a perfect crystalline structure that has zero entropy at absolute zero. When you're doing it with the green power, you're essentially sort of doing the same thing, but you're doing it more electrochemically, if that makes sense. So a perfect example of this, and this is something that blew my mind when I came across, was something very simple. The resource material on Titan, alkane spores.
Yeah.
You probably... I thought about that, like, what the hell are they? Like, where did they come from? Like, how do they work? And I kind of realized, and this is supported by the lore, but they talk about that essentially it's arcology flora, but then it's what's the word? It says basically crystallized methane and hive seeds that have been studied for the origin of the hive. And when I put all this together, I realized that what was happening was there were some plants that were unlucky enough to get exposed to a hive ritual. I don't know if you've seen the ascendant artichoke that Cade.
Ascendant artichoke, I remember that.
Yeah. So similar sort of deal. Basically, certain flora has been exposed to a hive ritual, and some of it's probably just turned into goo, but some of it have undergone almost like a forced evolution. And what's happened is, when you look at an alkane is actually a type of chemical, and methane is the simplest alkane. It's almost like the final shape of alkanes. And what's interesting about methane is it's a hydrocarbon. Now, we human beings and most life on the planet, we get derived energy from carbohydrates. Carbohydrates have a carbon atom, a hydrogen atom, and an oxygen atom, which makes sense. It's why we drink water as well. Now, methane, on the other hand, is a hydrocarbon. So it's hydrogen, carbon, but no oxygen. So if you were a life form that was based on that derived energy from hydrocarbons, like, say, methane, you could live out in a methane environment. So essentially what has happened is that, this is my theory, is that the alkane spores started off as archaeology flora, got exposed to a hive ritual, became subatomically reduced to the point where they were almost able to de-evolve and go from a carbohydrate based ecology to a hydrocarbon based one, and all of a sudden they could flourish outside in the methane environment of Titan. So essentially they have been able to survive or transcend by becoming more simplistic. What do you think about that?
This
That's
reminds
crazy.
me. This reminds me of the origin of I think it was a program here in the United States on maybe like Discovery or maybe back on, remember the Science Channel? Maybe I'm dating myself here, but it was this idea. It was this idea that it was trying to like imagine life on other planets. And there was this gas giant where there were these methane striders that were just kind of like feeding off of it and like traveling off of it the whole way. I'm sorry, that oversimplification.
That's basically, and I think that's how. Once I started looking into hive magic and sulfur and that, there's a line even when the Dredgens, the Shadow of Yore, they basically I should really pull up the one, but essentially they say, I'm going to actually just pull it up because it's probably better if I read it, because it basically, when you understand it, it explains exactly what the hive do. Let me just find that.
Because they're living on these like floating islands. Like everything about them seems like this because of how short-lived they are. I don't know if you guys have watched Invincible, but they seem to like their species is so short-lived that they could have crashed on that planet a century ago, maybe 2 centuries ago, like not that long ago, and their physiology has changed because of how many generations they can go through so quickly.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's also why they, it's interesting because they do look like basically bone and dust. And there's also talk about calcification. You got the calcified ghost fragments. And that's quite interesting because there is this sort of, when you look in a lot of the hive descriptions, they talk about ossification, calcification. And that's essentially like, ossification happens when like flesh like calcifies, starts to harden, and it's actually becoming simpler, like chemically speaking. But by doing that, you end up getting a carapace and you end up becoming more hardy. And so there is a lot of sort of evolutionary principles that the hive sort of, and I've got the thing that I was going to read, but essentially they were looking at the thorn and the weapons of sorrow, and they said, and this is from the number 9 embrace, so IX embrace lore tab, and it says the hive had rituals for forced evolution, and what we'd found hinted at transmutation through corruption, degradation, and rebirth. The weapons of sorrow were real. Worse, they were a roadmap to a greater threat, a greater evil. So the key word there, and this is what led me down the rabbit hole, was transmutation. So transmutation is actually the link, really, between physics and alchemy. In alchemy, transmutation, and forgive anyone who's like a super expert on alchemy, I probably have the 101 understanding of alchemy, but transmutation is a pretty big deal in alchemy. You've probably heard of people trying to turn lead into gold. Yeah, so essentially, transmutation also has a physics analogy called nuclear transmutation. And so essentially, you what happens is, like for instance, you've got plutonium, right, which is a byproduct of uranium, because basically when uranium undergoes the nuclear reaction, it ends up changing. Like the elements in it change; they become simpler as it decays. So, I believe a similar sort of thing happens, or could be happening with what the Hive are doing. They are basically transmuting the organic flesh into something simpler, and so that's sort of where I think you may actually be able to link how the alchemical side of Hive magic, which is quite apparent when you look at it. We've also seen the alchemical symbols on the armor that we're going to get for Witch Queen. So that was when I saw that, I was like, wow.
All of the pieces. All of the pieces are coming into play. It's all coming together.
That's sort of what I think. I think there is, if you look in Destiny, I think there is definitely a scientific as well as a more mystical, but I think Destiny definitely does lean into the science. They like their scientific explanations for things. So I'm waiting for Witch Queen to see if, fingers crossed, if we do end up getting that. But
I dig it. No, that was crazy, man.
Well, Jinx, you owe me a Coke, since we both dug it at the same time.
I'll have to ship it to you. It might not taste good by the time it gets to you.
That's
Might be a little flat.
Oh, yeah, no, please no fountain cokes by way of ship. I think, I'm going to be honest, Lettuce. I think we might be able to make 2 episodes out of this one episode.
You know what? I'm game.
So you'll technically be our guest twice, which gives you 2 stamps into the 5 Timers Club Lounge already.
So I like that. Do I get a free coffee on the 5th stamp?
Oh, dude! You get in the you get your own chair in the 5 Timers Club Lounge, and it's free access to a hidden room on our Discord. Which is just where we post super secret memes and I guess also lore.
Yeah,
I'm gonna add that we also keep that's where the most ultimate lore secrets are. It's in the 5
crackpot ones. Okay. Yeah, no, definitely. I definitely think this can be a 2-parter episode.
Yeah,
we've been talking for 2 hours.
That's what I'm saying. I'll interject.
Is this going to be in the final? Or are you gonna?
We'll cut this part out.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah. I was just going to say, because there's there's a lot of ideas, a lot of things I talk about. So. Yeah, but at the same time, it's interesting to sort of So just if I go down a little rabbit hole or a little garden path, because I tend to talk about one idea, and then that idea makes me think of another idea, and then
no, dude, I'm the same way. I'm the same way.
Welcome to our show.
I'll be like, ooh, hive rooms, and then I need to do this, and then I need to do this, and then I'm like, why am I looking up this now? What the heck? How did I get from here to there?
And I don't help. I only
no, Taylor, you just make everything work. You're very much ooh, shiny.
That's what I'm saying.
It's great.
You need that intuition though. That's kind of the I had this on Destiny lore because it's a lot of times people come up with really outrageous spinfoil theories, and you get some people that are very, very logically minded, and they sort of try and analyze it for fallacies and that. And it's but sometimes I try to never really shut down a theory, no matter how spinfoil it is, because there might be a little grain of truth. Sometimes intuition is basically extrapolation from a psychological point of view. It's essentially adding new information. And people always talk about, about logic and facts, but at the end of the day, your logic and your facts is constrained by how much information you have.
Definitely.
If you're able to, an intuitive mind is honestly a boon, because you generate several ideas and then you can kind of, using the darkness metaphor, cut those back or simplify them, and I think that's kind of what happened. That's why the balance got messed up in the unveiling, because they were essentially working together. The gardener was creating this complexity and and this new information, and then the winnower was sort of winnowing it back. And that's, I think, when there's that balance between having people who are more logically minded and very factually based, and people who are more intuitive ideas people, having people work together like that, you end up getting, like, I think that's the best, the optimal way really to get to the truth. Like me personally, I've got a few people that I speak to on the Destiny Law channel and the Discords that they are very like factual. They know the law inside out, and sometimes I'll just say my theory, like, hey, I think, yada, yada, yada. And they'll just pull out this law, like straight away. They'll know where the inaccuracies in that is. And it's good because it actually makes my theory
stronger.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. I see that.
Yeah.
That's a very, what's the word? Blade theory approach.
What's that? Sorry? Blade?
Yeah, the blade theory, like you cut through it, make your theory stronger. Take the parts that are great.
Well, I think it's interesting because, like, I think that's essentially like how the whole bomb logic and sword logic thing.
Oh, I'm sorry, sword logic. Yeah, I completely brain farted that name. That's what I meant. Yes,
that's right. Blade logic works as well. But I think you've spoken about sword logic and bomb logic in the past, and it's interesting because, see, again, this actually what I was saying about information, and this is sort of where the sword logic is inherently flawed, because it is always about cutting down the existing shape, trying to get to a more final, more perfect shape, and it believes that this is the right way. Essentially, at its core, it's sort of very binary. You either exist or you don't exist. So we keep what is good and we get rid of what's bad. And eventually, we're going to reach the equilibrium where we have this final shape. But I always use... I have another word for sword logic. I call it Nokia logic, or Nokia, depending on how you pronounce it.
Yeah. How indestructible is their phone?
If the iPhone never came along, we would have had, our phones would probably be like, half the size of your hand, and they would be completely indestructible, and Snake would be, the best it could possibly be. Nokia was really good at what it did. But when the iPhone came along, it almost transcended its design. That's why the Nokia couldn't keep up. It couldn't adapt. It was a very, very good phone, but all of a sudden, phones started getting bigger because a new design, new information was put into the system, right? And this is interesting because essentially this is sort of what Mara does with the bomb. She realizes that sometimes you have to add a bit of complexity, in order to, you consider something like the eye. The eye is a very complex thing, and at some point you would have had to have had all this extra information and these useless parts of it, but it still needed this extra fluff basically to then be scaled back to the eye. And the bomb is another example. A sword, imagine if you took each component of the bomb on its own is pretty useless, right? And if you took the sword logic and applied it to each component of the bomb, you'd end up with a sword. You'd end up with, the sharpest parts that you can use. But by adding to the bomb and then putting it all together, once it formed this sort of collective arrangement, suddenly it had emergent properties. These new properties, that it could suddenly explode. It could suddenly, that with the sword logic alone never would have come to fruition. And this is, I think, this is sort of, I understand this is almost from a sort of point of view of design. Because I work in software, but I work with websites, and it's a similar thing that we sort of do. Is you come up with a lot of ideas, and then you sort of scale back. But it's the to and fro of that. Sometimes by adding more information, you reach a point where new ideas come to the forefront that never would have come about. And that's why I think, that's the traveler's argument, basically, is that you need this complexity. You need this diversity, that the honing everything down as a logic is flawed, it's fallacious, it doesn't work in the long run. And that's what I think the whole game of Destiny is about.
I can dig it. Yeah, I agree.
I dig it, man. No, that's really crazy.
I love it.
Awesome.
I love it. Oh man. All right.
So back on the show vibes. Lettuce. I think as we're closing out, where can I know you introduced yourself earlier, but where can any new fans who maybe didn't know about your stuff and all that great stuff you work, where can they find you?
So yeah, I'm on Reddit. I don't have a Twitter, although I'm thinking about making one. But it's user LettuceDifferent 5104. So keeping it pretty cozy at the moment. Just I'm sort of waiting for Witch Queen to come out.
Yeah, and, I'm in the same boat.
Give me a bit more information.
Yeah. No, I'm like I said, I'm in the same boat with that because I don't want to start doing all this work on my Hive Rune stuff and then have Witch Queen come out and be like, "Oh, here's new Hive Runes that throw all your theory into whack." So I'm kind of like just kind of sitting here twiddling my fingers. It's like, come on.
I feel like
we're kind of crying.
I feel like all of us who try to log one thing in Destiny are in that continual space of the Bife, which I love. My name is Bife, and this is not against the one in the video, but the entire Destiny universe summed up, and then it keeps going, and then you gotta keep making more video, and it's never gonna end.
Pretty much.
Well, I had a similar sort of thing where I did a whole bunch of Reddit posts over I think from about November, which is when I did the Perfect Crystals post, all the way up to I think I did the one on Soulfire, I did the one on the Phantom Energy, which is what I think the third one's going to be. And I did a whole bunch of things, and I actually came to I built a framework basically of what I understood from a scientific point of view and a law-based point of view, what I thought the darkness was. But that saga almost ended. I feel now like I've gotten to the point where, and someone actually commented on there, and I think it was a bit of a, it wasn't a very nice comment. They were basically saying that I'd reached critical mass and that I was essentially that my theories were just sporting other theories. And it's funny because he actually wasn't wrong, and it actually made me realize that you need to know when to kind of stop when a theory is okay, this is what I've got for given the information I have, now I need to wait for more information because at the end of the day, because otherwise you're just building on, it's like building on a sandcastle, eventually if you don't have a solid foundation, that's going to crash down. So I feel like, so I feel like I sort of got to the point where I was like, this is my thing, this is my theory, let's see what happens. Let's see, how much of that gets true, because I might find out come Witch Queen that we get a completely different subclass. We don't get a subclass, but we do get the Soulfire subclass, and it might be more mystical than I think it is. It might not be based on science at all. So I don't know. I'm trying to do is take what I've got, the information I've got.
No, definitely.
And
It might be entirely based on cogs or sprockets
yeah,
in the year 2000.
Oh my god.
No, it's a Nokia based
Yeah.
subclass.
We
You
just
just
throw
become-
phones at people. You just
Yeah,
throw phones
and
at
you
people.
just have invincibility for like about 10 seconds, where you're just literally the embodiment, because you got Ahamkara powers, so you can shapeshift into Nokia.
All of the super
There you
build
go,
up is you
see?
winding the cogs the whole time, just with a key.
That's great. That's great.
I like that.
Oh man. My dude, do you have any shout outs? I know you made a couple in the show, and that's okay. Those still count. But do you have any shout outs like that you want to reiterate or add to? Do you have any shout outs?
So I want to give a shout out to actually the Destiny, not just the Destiny lore. I spend a lot of time in Destiny lore. I also spend a lot of time on Discord, and one of the things I love about the community is just they've just been very welcoming. I've made so many friends, and that being able to talk about ideas, and everyone's really chill. Like, it's, I thought I was going to be really judged for what I'd come up with, but everyone has this attitude of like, they want to help build off of each other, and that's kind of what I want. Is just because a lot of these ideas that I've come up with, they're not necessarily like, I haven't worked in a vacuum. Like, even the Soulfire post I did, I was inspired by another post that was written years ago. And a lot of the things I've come up with are inspired by these great minds that frequent that subreddit. So that's kind of what I want to give a shout out to, because everyone on there is pretty awesome. So yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, I dig that. Oh, I tell you what, Lucy, you got any shout outs?
I got any shout outs. I'm always bad at the shout outing. Shout out.
If I was gonna say,
I can't even.
The default is Bungie, though, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
it's always there. Do you want to pass it to me, and then let's do a shout out to our guest?
Sure, I dig that. I like
Yeah.
that. That's cute.
Sure. Thank you so much for coming on and really blessing us with all your ideas and all your insights
this was
from
like
a
super
science-based
crazy.
perspective. Yeah, like it was really amazing, and I really appreciate. I know that listeners might not understand this, but like time difference really played a role. Like it's night for me and about lunchtime for you. And yeah, man. Just thank you so much for accommodating the show and really trying to get on here, and then really just honestly, like, I'll say it again, like, blessing us with all your insights. Like, this was amazing.
No, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, man.
And I was saying earlier about I recently came across your show, but like I've started binging your podcast, and honestly, I think like I'll give a second shout out to you guys, because what you guys do is I love the freestyle. It's just like a bunch of mates chatting, and I think that's a really comfortable. You feel comfortable listening, and I love where you take it, and I've learnt a lot, even listening to some of the theories that you've come up, like the exo, the exo mind, and whether the two exos and which one would be resurrected. Like, they're really good questions, to ask, and so that's pretty cool. So just keep doing what you're doing, and I think I'm digging it.
Thank
Thank you so much. That's so wholesome.
Yeah, I really appreciate the endorsement, and I'm really glad that you love the show. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I do.
Well, I think with that, everyone.
It might be Lucy's turn.
Oh, I think she co-signed on ours. Unless you had like some separate ones.
Oh, okay.
I guess I can do a shout out. I can do a shout out. It's fine.
Ooh.
I'll do one. I'll do a surprise one.
I want.
I
nice.
guess shout out. I guess this is kind of, I don't know. This is kind of weird, but shout out to my boss, because my boss has been super cool, and because I've been working for NASA for the past 4 years, 5? I can't math hard, even though I do.
I was gonna say that's not a good sign for whatever you.
Everything's fine. Everything's fine.
Sure, you work at NASA?
Hey, no, I'm kidding.
No, it's a joke. Sorry.
No, I know.
No, you're amazing. Yeah, and your Hive Rune database was amazing. Okay.
Yes. Anyways, so because basically while I've been also working at NASA, most of the stuff I've also been doing is like research, and my publication is finally done, and it's only taken me like 4 years to finish that. So shout out to my boss for kind of helping me with that, because I've like helped on, I've been co-authors on publications before, pretty straightforward. You just, part of the peer review process, you just give them feedback, add in what you did to the paper, and that's pretty much it. But being a first author on a paper is very different than that, because that means you have to write everything, and I didn't really know what I was doing, and my boss, he definitely helped me out with all of that, so I'm very thankful for him, and I'm very glad my paper is done. I never want to look at another ice belt ever again. I never want to look at any more climate plots ever again. I am tired of them.
Phrases I never thought I would co-sign with real hard.
Science.
I hope I never look at a climate plot ever.
Climate plot, yes. I'm tired of looking. Not that climate is bad. It's just I've just spent the past 4+ years looking at plots of climate over and over.
I just had a few connectivity issues, by the way.
It's okay.
Everything went robot.
Oh man, there was whole conversations about climate plots.
Climate plots, Taylor. Clean your ears.
That's what I said.
Oh, it sounded like you said climate clots.
I swear to God, you just said the same word twice to me. I don't know what's happening anymore.
I did. Okay, you know what? Everything is fine. Oh no, Lettuce! No, he got this thing disconnected. Oh no.
It's okay. We're signing off. If he's able to rejoin here in a sec, we'll get his goodbye.
But what about ending the recording? He won't know when to end the recording.
We should say end it now.
I guess end it now. Okay.
End it. No, hold on. We're gonna say goodbye though on our recordings.
Oh, okay. Oh, he's back. He's back.
Oh.
Lettuce,
are you there?
You live.
Do you live,
Say
my friend?
Something.
I just cut out for a whole.
It's okay. It's okay.
It's okay. It's okay. We're doing the goodbyes. So it's okay. So everyone, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Thank you to our guest for joining us, and stay hydrated, stay safe, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Toodles.
You can say goodbye too, Lettuce.
Goodbye.
All right, now we can hit stop.
That's off, Guardians. That's it for this week's discussion. Have any questions or comments about this episode? You can reach out to us on Twitter @SpinfoilTheory, or write us an email at spinfoiltheory@gmail.com. If you'd like to read our show notes, check out articles, listen to past episodes, and more, be sure to pay us a visit over at our website, spinfoiltheory.com.
The Lore Network.